Everybody, this evening, thank you for coming to the technology building and grounds meeting. We'll start it off and turn it over to Greg.
Welcome, everyone. First item on the agenda, well, actually, all of my agenda items are mostly updates. So, the start of the year, we transitioned to a new bus routing program with TransFinder, and we started back probably March building routes. There was no easy way to take the routes that we did have and put them into TransFinder, so they all had to be rebuilt from scratch. So that took a while, but I'm happy to say that the start of school went off using our transportation software very well. Each day last week we got a little bit better by the end of the week, and we were doing pretty well. So that transition went very smoothly. And the transition from Brandywine Transportation to Christ Transportation also went well. It was almost seamless transition. It's like we didn't even know it happened. They took on or assumed all the same employees. They all stayed on, and the transition was very smoothly. We didn't really notice anything, so that all went really well.
So, is there equipment up to snuff too and stuff?
Yes, we have all the same equipment, same people. Everything went very smoothly.
And they bought Brandywine, assumed
did they?
ownership of Brandywine, or are they two separate companies? Is it a whole new company?
They bought out Brandywine.
They bought out Brandywine.
Student transportation part of the business, so the
Okay.
busing part. I believe Brandywine, Mr. Gross, I think, is still selling vehicles, but he's not doing the student transportation component anymore.
Okay. So then the employee side of it, since we would have approved them under Brandywine, it just is a grandfather?
So
To this?
we would, unless they are new and have not been approved for this year, because we approve our bus drivers every year.
Okay.
So if they onboard, like now moving forward, they would have to get approved. But the terms of the contract was that they assume all terms of the prior contract.
Including
Including
cost?
yes,
Yes.
yes. So no price changes until that, I
Thank you
think
for
that
clarification.
sunsets in 2026,
I
2025.
believe so, 26.
Thank you.
Yep.
The next agenda item, in-house, we replaced the two secure vestibule windows at the high school and at Peters Elementary. We had a sliding type window there before. We replaced it with a fixed pane piece of glass. So improved the security at these vestibules. They are in. They're drywalled. We have some finishing touches to do on the rest of it, but they're in place and they're functioning, and it seems like everyone's very happy with that new setup. Any other questions on that item? And the last item, this was a request by administration to install a half door between the secure vestibule and the main office. It was more of to direct everyone to go through the guidance department rather than walk through the high school office proper. So that door is in. They tell me it's nearly finished. I haven't been down since last week, but it was in place. It's operational, but we had some trim work and paint to do on it, but it was in place for the first day of school. Any questions on that item? So that pretty much concludes my section for this evening. Are there any other items? Anything else? Any questions for buildings and grounds?
I just asked Mr. Durdick for an update on the softball, baseball field. So he was gonna follow up on that, just as where we are with any of it. I know it's pushed, I understand that part of it, but just kind of keeping us abreast as we go through that timeframe.
And would you like that Monday evening in a board update?
It could just
or-
be in an update, that's fine. I would just ask for a kind of, what's the next step? Not that, my concern partially is we have donated, scrapped, however you want to say that, certain portions of the baseball and softball fields, planning to get ready for next year. And what are we putting in place to make sure that our current athletes at the facilities have facilities to use and are in safe working order?
So I have spoke to both youth organization leaders, and they are going to kind of donate back to us the batting cages. So we have them for the spring. It is not our intent to reinstall the outfield fences for this season, knowing that we're going to have permanent structures going up for the following season.
Okay. Let's see how that works. I'm concerned about the outfield fences, to be honest, and it's just been there, done that concept, and we had requests to put them up because of safety purposes. I know we're in that transition, I understand, and things come up, but I'm concerned about not putting those back up.
They were actually board approved to be sold.
I understand, I
So
get
we
it.
can, if the board wants to direct me to inquire about purchasing new ones, I can, or see if we can borrow them from somewhere. But at this point, it was our intent to play like we've been playing for the previous kind of decades
Yeah.
for the upcoming season. However, I'm open to suggestions from the committee.
Let's see moving forward. Guess I would look to the coaches to make recommendations. If they feel it's okay, then okay. If they feel that there's a safety concern, then I would be on board to think of an option.
I will,
What do you mean, Gail, when you say, just clarify for me, a safety concern?
Yeah.
Do you
So
mean like
there
players
was-
running into each other, or?
Balls coming into the fields, it's happened in the past. There was discussion about that, which is what drove a little bit of the outfield fences.
Yep.
Including some of the, obviously the rest of the Colonial League, they all have some type of outfield fence. So it was brought up, they sat here and talked to us about it. So I'm just going back to what they were saying as coaches, coming to us as a concern, that I understand we sold them. We were going down this path. I completely understand. I appreciate it. What needs to happen. And things happen. I get it. I'm just making sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that the teams that are going to be playing on those fields feel comfortable, safe. Colonial League's okay with it, all of those things, because we had it and now we don't. Because there's a change that happened because of permitting. Things out of our control, not in our control.
Yeah, I just wonder what your actual
Yeah.
concern was. and
That
thank you for
was,
Okay.
it was more so listening to the coaches sitting here
Yep.
of
Okay.
why we did it in the first place.
If
Got
we
it.
purchase, are we just purchasing early? Are we purchasing and then have to purchase again?
We would have to purchase again because it was all part of the units.
So the cost, I'd like to know what the cost is.
well,
gonna
they're
be.
temporary fences. If we were to purchase again, it would be the other kind of
Permanently.
like, no, that
I-
would be temporary for this spring season.
Right.
For the spring of 2025, they would then be part of the construction project. They would
I
be
understand that,
permanent.
but
Correct,
the cost of the temporaries, I'd like to know.
yes. I will have Mr. Geis talk to coaches and Colonial League officers.
Thank you. That's it. If they're fine with it, I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure that we're early enough into the season that if we have to do something, we can do that.
Understood.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Thank you, Gail. Okay, I guess we'll close that and to Tim.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Just the first thing is a technology update for the first week of school. First, I'd like to let everybody know that my staff did a great job this year. Mr. Hawes, Mr. Kramer, and we had a new employee, Ms. Snyder. They did a fantastic job getting all the technology ready for the start of the year. We literally touch thousands of laptops, probably a couple thousand altogether over the summer to get ready for the next school year, and they did a great job. We had all the Chromebooks ready for the students. And what we had done the last 2 years now, we deliver the Chromebooks right to the classrooms before the week before school starts. So we take them around, deliver them right to all the homerooms. The only issue you run into there is sometimes classes change, and we have to go around the first week sometime and swap some devices, but that's usually very minimal. So we got all the devices out to the classrooms, and then what we do is the night before school starts, Sunday night, we reset all the student passwords. That way Monday morning they come in fresh, and the teachers are provided what those passwords will be, and then the students can reset their passwords on the opening day. So we did that again this year, and it worked really well, and we had all the devices delivered, everything's good to go. We also have 30 new projectors installed over here at Slatington Elementary. Again, that was something the last couple of years we had a delay in shipments, and we weren't able to get those in until over the winter holiday break. This year we were able to get those in over the summer, so that was those are all ready to go as well. And the last thing is the staff laptops. We have all the staff laptops, new laptops ready to go. What we're doing there is, since we have to transfer some documents over to the new computers, we're kind of going through those as we have time to do it. So we do have quite a few done. We're probably, I would say, maybe 30 to 40% complete there. But over the next few weeks here, the staff will be receiving their laptops. They are ready to go. We're just kind of rolling them out slowly because we have to go to each individual, get their laptop back, give them a new laptop, and then we have to transfer some files. Some staff requires certain programs to be installed, so sometimes that takes a little time, but they're really all ready to go, so we are rolling that out over the next couple weeks. So that is the opening day. I think everything went very smoothly from, for our department. So does anybody have any questions about that? Nope. Okay, if we don't have any questions, I'll move on to the next item. Next item I have on here is about E-rate Category 2 funding. Category 2 funding is for things such as network equipment, wireless, access points, things of that nature. We are currently in, E-rate started what they call E-rate cycles. And they recently started doing this. So we're in a current E-rate cycle from 2021 to 2025. And we did not use any of our funds yet on this current E-rate cycle. So we currently have $269,538 in E-rate funds available. Now, E-rate funds, even though that money is available, doesn't mean we just get that money. What you have to do is you have to have some type of a qualifying product. And then they don't pay for everything. We get an E-rate discount. So basically, we have to spend some money in order to get some money. So it's not like we just get that money, we can just go out and buy it, and it doesn't cost us anything. So it still costs us money. Right now, since we started doing the CEP program, our E-rate discount went from, we were at 70%, we're now at 80%. So we get $8 for every $10 you spend, okay? But not everything is E-rateable. Things such as the district office, that's not E-rateable. So when we do these projects, things like the district office, things like down at the field house, things like that aren't E-rateable. So when we do these projects, you're not necessarily going to get exactly that 80% discount. But one of the things that we would like to get in before this E-rate cycle runs out is the wireless access point project. The last time we did our wireless system, the wireless network in the district was 2018. All right, and a wireless system, typically you would look at 6 to 8 years. So if we would start this fall, the way E-rate works is you have to apply for your funding in the fall, the year before you would do the project. So since it's 2023, right now we would be in the planning stages for a 2024 project. So this would be something that we'd be looking at doing next summer. But we would have to start the process now. So what we're looking at doing is we were interested in looking at doing the wireless access point, since it will be 6 years in 2024 that it was installed. So it would be right in that 6 to 8 year time frame that we were looking at. And what I would like to do is I would like to I would like to go out and get requests for proposals. I have to submit what's called a FCC Form 470 in the E-rate system. And then they send, what that does is that tells vendors that, hey, we're looking for a proposal. They'll come back and they'll give me a proposal. And then from there, it doesn't mean that we're tied into anything. Then from there, I would come back to the board and say, hey, these are proposals we have. This is I can get a better idea of what the funding would be, what the approximate E-rate might be, and then we can make a decision from there. It would have to be approved if we were looking to do it in 2024. Typically, it's due, I have to get the proposals in the fall, and then we would have to approve this typically by the February board meeting if we were going to go forward with the project. The latest would be March, but that's pushing it because there's an E-rate deadline usually in mid-March. So if we get pushed back because of let's say a snow day or something, we're a board meeting, we miss a board meeting because of snow or something like that, it would be better to get it in February. Last time we did this project, just to give you an idea, it was, the cost of the project was $193,000 roughly altogether. We received $65,000, $65,600 in E-rate funding for that project. I'm estimating, I was just looking at some of the prices of some of the access points and things that we would do. And then also for the, we'd be replacing our airway monitoring system with Aruba Central. I'm estimating it could cost upwards of $275,000 this time, but again, that's what the proposals are for. That's what the requests for proposals are for. So what I'm looking for is I would like to go out and get requests for proposals. So I guess I'm just throwing it out the board. Would you be okay with me getting those numbers together? Again, it doesn't tie us into anything, but I think it's time that we start looking at this.
Looks like everybody's shaking their head. Already.
Okay, yeah, and if we don't do it 2024 to last year, be 2025 in order to get that E-rate money, and that would be, so I would like to start looking now to see what we can do. Okay, so I will get some of those numbers together for you, get some proposals, and then we'll go from there in the future. Another thing I have on there is the firewall. We also installed our firewall in 2018 as well. Up until this past year, firewalls were never, they weren't E-rateable. Schools were complaining about that. They're like, hey, we need to have some, firewalls essential for cybersecurity purposes. It blocks a lot of traffic that would normally make it into our network, and it gets filtered out through our firewall. We sell a lot of policies in there, like we do geo-blocking. We block some traffic from areas that we know where they try to send things into our network. So we can do geo-blocking, things like that. So firewall is really a must-have. So they did say now that we can also use the E-rate program for a firewall as well. So another thing I would like to do is I would like to get an RFP out there for looking at upgrading our firewall as well. Because our firewall, again, it's going to be 2014, you're going to be looking at 6 years old, so I think it's time that we start looking at an upgrade there as well. And just to give you an idea, last time we did a firewall, it was $18,425. I'm estimating, again, it could be in the $20,000 to $25,000 range, depending on what firewall and how much prices have gone up. And again, that is E-rateable, so we could see potentially 80% of that funds coming back to us through the E-rate.
So assuming it's okay, Eric, I think everybody's shaking their head.
Eric, is that also part of the FCC Form 470?
Yes, I would do a
So
separate one for that because it's a separate project. Yeah, so I would do two Form 470 requests for proposals. And then what happens is that goes in the E-rate system, and then people can bid on those, and they send us back their prices, and then we have to evaluate them. And again, that's when I would come back to you and say, these are the proposals we received, this is what we suggest, and if we don't like them, we could always wait till next year and do it again, but I think this is a good time frame to try to get that in. Because in the next E-rate cycle, once we get past the 2025 E-rate year, the next one will be 2026 to 2030, or I think we're talking that far out, but then we'd be looking at the network upgrade again at that point, and that's even a more expensive project. That would be the switches, the actual network infrastructure. That's even a little more expensive than these projects. So we would be looking at that next E-rate cycle for that, so, okay?
Does the spending of the funds, so say for instance in that cycle, you say there's 269,000 left, right? If in that cycle we don't spend it, right? Does that affect the next E-rate that we would Put
No,
it, so you said we're now getting 80% and
It doesn't,
just-
it doesn't affect it in that way, no. The way, what they use for that is they use your enrollment data, and they use your free and reduced lunch data. And now that we're CEP, it actually bumped us up
Okay.
to the 80%. So no, it does not affect that, but you do lose the money's
Sure.
gone. After the 5 years, then the money, yeah, if you
Sure.
don't use it, you lose it. But it does cost you money as well, so
Right.
it's not, it's not 100% free money. But yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you for clarifying, appreciate
Yep.
it.
If you want to give me 80 cents back on every dollar I spend, we can have some conversations.
That's not me, I gotta talk to Uncle Sam. It's really your money anyway. So, any other questions about that? Okay, so that's what I'll do then. I will fill out the 470s and get some requests for proposals, and we'll discuss it down the road. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 2nd. So then I will pass it on to Mrs. Cole for finance.
I don't see Sue or Nikki here, but I do see cafeteria updates on the.
So I'm gonna try my best to cover the cafeteria update this evening. I would like to share that our food services director, Mrs. Fink, and her husband and their 3 boys now have an additional member of the family. Declan came a day early. So Declan Fink is now part of the Declan family. And everybody's healthy and doing well.
Good.
Thanks for that update.
Sure.
That's great.
And also Sue Bonick did start today. And on Friday afternoon, we were informed that we would be going through our food services audit. So the good news is she has experience. And then honestly,
Oh, my gosh.
honestly, the on-site, this is not part of the update, but it just came in Friday, because that's when they like to tell us things. The on-site part of the audit was December. Mrs. Fink will be back by then. I'm confident that Mrs. Bonick and her team and the rest of the administrators will have Mrs. Fink set up to have a successful on-site audit. Okay.
You don't think you're going to need any extra help in the meantime while this is working? I think Ms. Monic's working like 2 days a week, something like that, or 2 days, is it 2 days a week?
It's she was approved for 2 days a week. If I feel like we need to add a day or two, I'll come back to you. The good news is with our new Primero Edge, a lot of the information that they will need to pull, they can run reports for what they call the virtual desktop audit.
Okay, I just want to go on record and saying if you need another day for her,
Absolutely.
you got to get it. You can't let her hanging out there at that time. It's too critical, so.
I agree with that, yeah.
Okay. We will keep our pulse on that, and I appreciate that message of support. So the first 4 days of school, that short week, at the middle school and high school, they started implementing like a grab-and-go breakfast. So as students come into the building at the high school, at both entry points, there are some cards set up with some of our food service employees, and they can literally walk up, grab, a simple breakfast meal, breakfast drink, and head into homeroom. And at the middle school, the model is food services department early in the morning delivers like a box of meals per homeroom where the kids can have it there. So here are our accounts for those first 4 days. Typically, all indicators from Mrs. Fink were that the first couple days of the school year, breakfast is never a kind of popular meal for the students, even though it's free for all of them. Kids are more excited to come in and see their friends, check out their schedule, talk to their teachers, and they don't necessarily grab the breakfast right away. So you can kind of see the counts at the high school at the middle school went up Thursday. Mr. Hauser, I know you had like a special event that day, if you want to just describe that, why the counts were so high that day.
Sure, but Wednesday jumped up because that was the day I literally got on the horn and said, breakfast is good for you, eat up, it makes you strong, and that jumped it by 30. And then Thursday, it was our extracurricular activities fair, which was part of our middle school boot camp. So we served breakfast during that. So as kids were circulating, they were able to grab a snack. So that, almost all of our kids obliged. So,
Right. And again, you know, the more children that participate in that, one, it's, you know, not only is it good for them and their families, because it's at no cost to them, it's at no cost, or it's at minimal cost to the district, because we get so many cents back on a dollar due to the CEP program.
Did that higher number impact anything as far as having prep work and having enough meals available?
No, the cafeteria prepares a certain amount every day, and we're adjusting that based on how many we actually, or how many kids actually take breakfast in the first couple of weeks of school. We kind of expected that number to go up a little bit. I didn't quite expect it that high, but we were in good shape, though. We had enough for everybody, plus a little more. So we were good. So I'm hoping that number
Keeps going.
stays around 100 or so, and because that'll be about double what we've done in the past.
Thanks.
And at the high school, for those first 4 days, now keep in mind at the high school, that's where the students, if they walk by a cart and they want one, they can just grab it and take it with them. Started out in the 60s and, you know, a high of 113 and ended the week on Thursday with 88. Dr. Bali or Mr. Stroll, I don't know if either of you have any kind of simple feedback on how that went.
I mean, the first few days, because they're so used to going into the cafeteria, you know, we had staff there, they'd go right by it. So we've been doing kind of the same thing as Mr. Hauser, just kind of building it up a little bit, pumping it up, and, you know, so clearly we did something better on whatever day that was, on Tuesday. Because Monday, they literally were just walking right by it. So we've been welcoming them in the morning with an announcement. So I think they're going to grow as they catch on a little bit. So especially, it's so funny to watch them, because if 1 or 2 kids grab it, then like 10 more will. But they won't be the first in the line to grab it. So like sometimes I'll just hand it to them, hey, look what's in here today. So yeah, so I think we'll get higher.
Thank you. And that concludes the cafeteria update or report for this evening. And next on the agenda, we'd like to discuss 2 potential vehicle purchases for the school district. I will discuss the police vehicle thought, and Mrs. Moltoris will discuss the district-owned van or vans. So as you're aware, our Northern Lehigh Police Department currently has 2 police vehicles, the white Charger and then the black Ford Edge. When we expanded our police department, I had shared with the school board a couple times that administration is going to come back and research adding a 3rd vehicle. So then that way, you know, all this campus and Peters, and when we do go out, when our police go out to do things like home visits and stuff like that, we're not kind of like maneuvering vehicles for them to be able to use. What we found is used vehicles, if we were to purchase a used vehicle, we would have to go out for bid, because we have not found any suitable used vehicle that does not exceed the bid threshold of, I believe, $22,500, Mrs. Moltors? Okay. The used vehicle kind of quotes that we've been getting are coming in the low 30s, and then you add the upfitting to it, you're probably looking at like another $10,000. A brand new vehicle, which we would not have to go out to bid for because you can do co-stars for a new vehicle, you're looking at, for the new vehicle with the upfitting, probably about 50 to 55. So administration is requesting direction on, would you like us to go out to bid for a used vehicle if you support a 3rd vehicle? Or would you like us to go the co-stars route for a new vehicle if you support a 3rd police vehicle? I can share with you that our data indicates that the mileage for either of our police vehicles is very low annually. We're talking about 1,500 miles a year for a vehicle, because most of it is on campus or from here to Peters and back. And we, you know, keep them maintained on a regular schedule. So we'll kind of open that up for discussion amongst the committee members.
What is CoStar?
What is it?
Yeah.
So CoStars is the approved vendors by the state, where if they get on the CoStars list, the state is saying entities like school districts can purchase directly from them without going out for bid.
Yeah, it's a procurement.
Consortium.
I just throw it on the table, that's all.
Yeah, it's just a.
Did you have a conversation with Greg?
Mr. Rentschler?
Yeah.
We did. One of the vehicles that they shared with us is they had recommended the new Chevy Blazer, which is, I guess, what you would consider maybe a mid-size SUV, probably about the size of the Ford Edge that we have. The problem is the upfitting companies, those models are so new and just starting to be introduced into police forces, they don't have upfitting packages for them yet. So it's literally just like a civilian SUV.
And it's more expensive too, initially and then the upfitting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fedorci, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
There
you
are
didn't.
two, I guess what I would call local upfitting companies. One of them is in Nazareth, whose name escapes me right now, and the other one is Koch, where we purchased our last vehicle from.
Are there any grants still available or potentially coming up for safety and security for school districts?
So I reached out to our local legislators. Oh my goodness, Zach and
Ryan?
Ryan. Oh my God, thank you.
McKenzie, yeah.
Okay, Ryan McKenzie, yes, and Zach Macon, and they both got back to me and said that they are hearing that there's going to be new kind of PCCD competitive grants released, but it's not part of the state budget because the state budget, the code part of it is still being finalized. However, I did receive today an email that had a list of about maybe 4 or 5 different grant opportunities through PCCD, but they were more like mental health, suicide awareness, prevention, stuff like that. They weren't what I would call like equipment type of grants. So I don't, the other one, which we looked into previously because we knew it was coming, was the community police officer or police department grants through PCCD. It's called community policing. And it doesn't look like as a school district we would qualify for that.
My question is, again, I apologize. I know the threshold was 22.5 approximately. What are we looking at though?
So I would say
For used.
for a used one, probably 40 to
I was gonna
maybe
say, yeah.
45.
Used vehicles are Is really
that
high
equipped?
right now.
Yeah, you're very high. All vehicles are very high right now. And then probably 50 to 55 for a new one. One of the things that we really want to get is make sure that it has at least all-wheel drive, especially for, there's been a number of times where if we have to do like an early dismissal or something like that and a child's guardians are not there to receive them, especially at Peters, they go back to the school. And then a lot of times we have to get those children home, and we've been fortunate with the Ford Edge because it's all-wheel drive. So we would like to have
Right.
another
My
all-wheel drive.
concern with used vehicles, and I know myself, is that, you're taking a chance on what kind of problems was in that used vehicle, and how much warranty do you get when you get a used vehicle. Also, the number of years, the age of that vehicle. So, if we're talking approximately $10,000 to $15,000 additional for a new one, I certainly would say we're better off financially as far as even a long-term and maintaining it is to go to a new one. That's my feeling.
Thank you.
I'm just concerned about the upfitting, like you said.
But you have to feed it to one.
Yeah, but you're saying so the Blazer, but that's only if we went that route with the Blazer.
Well,
Oh, with that
as
particular-
far as we can tell, for any type of vehicle, for the minimum upfitting package, we're looking at like around 10 grand.
Yeah, but we can find a vehicle.
And then have it upfitted, yes.
Yeah. I think
I just recommend, if we want to go used, we'll go out for bid, right? Our auditor said that we can write a bid request for used vehicles. If you direct us to go look at new co-stars, I would request that you give us a not to exceed limit.
Is there any reason why we can't do both? I guess, and I heard what you said, Gary, it's a big difference, but if we're talking 40 to 45, and that's really 38, we're talking 50 to 55, and that's really 57.9, that would change what the, or if one's 45 and one's 52, I'm clear, there's no doubt in my mind, but if one comes in low and one high, I might want to go the other way. It's hard for me to make that decision without having good solid numbers in front of me, and I don't want to put a burden on you, but.
Well, I think, and I'll look to our business director for this. So if we put out a bid request, right, that's a 3-week minimum posting that we have to leave it out there, although that's deceiving. It's actually only 2 weeks because you can do a Saturday, a Sunday, and then a Sunday to post it. So we should know fairly quickly. For co-stars, if you were to say, okay, it makes more sense to purchase a new vehicle because a used vehicle is almost as much as a new vehicle. There we go purchase a new vehicle. There may be a wait time for delivery, but we could do that, Mr. Green.
I just feel more comfortable if I had a little bit more concrete information before I just went out and said one or the other,
Yeah.
And I agree conceptually, if they're, if you're getting a piece of crap for 45.
Well, yeah, the years of it,
buy the
and
new one,
considering the
but,
fact of how long, the longevity of having a new vehicle,
Yeah.
for us, may be better off than having to purchase another one in 2 or 3 years because of, I look at my own self as when I purchase a vehicle. I look at all those angles, and certainly today, looking at used vehicles, I know even when
through the
my
roof,
lease
yeah.
went out, it paid me much more to buy out my lease for a couple $100,000, but not that, a couple thousand, than to pay another car and pay $1,000 a month for a new lease. I just could not see it.
The only good thing about it, it's not a lot of mileage on the vehicle.
Well, that's why I said mileage in years certainly is an issue.
So we can write a bid to put a cap on, miles already on the vehicle, that type of stuff. We can get that kind of
And
specific
age
in the
of it,
bid.
and the age of it.
Well, a year range.
I think that's
I
important.
mean, sometimes that does, looking at the number of miles we use, and I completely understand, and I guess if I look at what I would do, I would look at both options, right? And I agree with Mr. Green, it's really hard to make a decision without
Right, I agree with that part.
looking at something. You create a bid and you say all of a sudden you want nothing less than a 2023 used car, with 5,000 miles on it, well, then you might as well get a new, you know what I mean? So the bid has to be a reasonable request,
Oh, yeah.
not,
Most of the
You know.
quotes that we were getting on used vehicles were like what would be like a 2020, 2021 with like 30,000 miles on it, 35,000 miles on it. Most likely part of a fleet already. So then I think what I'm hearing everyone say is go out for bid, and I'm happy to kind of put out those bid specs, with the board, and then we'll see what kind of results we get, and then reconvene to continue the conversation.
Sounds good.
With the
You okay
figures from
with
CoStar.
Yeah, well, yeah.
With figures from CoStar.
Well, that would just be,
Yeah.
Here's the price.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I can
But we would need
do
those.
that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I feel like that gives me enough direction to go. How business office? Good. Okay.
Greg, you're right in bed.
And up next, Mrs. Molitoris is going to talk about potentially district-owned vans for our employees, not the transportation company, to be able to use to transport children.
Yeah, so this has come up quite a bit from, I want to say staff members who do like debate and scholastic scrimmage and those type things where we have like less than 10 kids or 10, right around 10 kids. That we're paying a full-size 72-passenger bus a lot of times to take these kids. We're paying a driver to sit there the entire time to be with these kids because they get layover time for sitting there while this is going on. So we kind of started looking at it and said, what are we looking at? What are we putting out a year? I kind of did some rough numbers this afternoon and looking at things like debate, scholastic scrimmage, and like your debate a lot of times is 5, 6, 7 kids. Scholastic scrimmage is the same way. We academic ACE. They came to one of our board meetings a couple years ago. I think there were 5 kids in that. So roughly, we also rented a van from Enterprise last year to take our kids out to track because there was only like, I think, three kids that played, and I think that were in states out there, and then there was like 4 coaches or something. We paid a little over $1,000 for that van for just 2 nights. So there's a lot of money kind of going out the door, so we were kind of like, let's see what we can do about getting our own district van. The issue is a district van has to be less than a 10 it can't be more than a 10 passengers, and one of those passengers is the driver. So the most you can take in those vans is 9 students, correct? If you go with a passenger van, I was originally looking at those, like, I want to say spaceship looking vans that are made by Ford, that are common, like the 12 and the 15 passenger van. You can get them, but if you do, you have to do it as a bus. So you have to get bus plates on it, has to be inspected twice a year. The Pennsylvania State Police have to come once a year and inspect it and just make sure it's all good. And everybody that drives that has to have their CDL, correct?
Absolutely.
Correct. So it's a different CDL than a 72 passenger CDL.
You're right.
But they would still have to, and that's
Right.
an every year physical they would have to get and all that other stuff. So we're kind of backed off from that and are advocating more for like a regular, like 10 passenger, just regular van that we can have, that the students, these smaller clubs can use. The coaches and people that I've talked to had said that they have no issues with driving the students. And of course we have our own gas and all that other kind of stuff on property. So it's, it will make the process a lot easier. This is really like in the first stages. Like I'm just starting to look at this from our opening day, and some teachers had asked us about this. So I did do a reach out to school districts today because I was just curious. I said, hey, are there anything that I need to know? Like, what am I not thinking of? The IU, Northwestern Lehigh, Jim Thorpe, Lehigh, and East Penn, Parkland, and Whitehall all have their own vans for this kind of purpose. They even allow their staff to use it. If you have like 5 teachers who are going out for a training for the day, they all meet here, they get in that van and they go. So you're not paying mileage for those teachers as well. Southern Lehigh, Allentown, and Salisbury were no, but Salisbury is currently talking about doing it as well. Parkland had told me that the 10 passenger vans are, right now, they just put in an order for 9 and they're a year out. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. So we're looking for the board, if this is something the board would be interested in considering, that we would have something like this on staff. Everybody had said they run motor vehicles on all the drivers to make sure that they're, they don't have any DUIs or stuff like that we got to be concerned with, that they have a good, safe driving record. Everybody is required to give us a copy of their license. We also can turn that into our insurance company, and the insurance company will cover them while they drive our district van. So we're still in the beginning process and thinking about this, but that is our question. And although we can only do a 9 passenger or 10 passenger, we start with one, and is it something that in 5 years we think about, maybe we add another one for those groups that might be at 12 or 13 kids, and you have 2 advisors, they can both drive a van and take the kids around.
Did you get a cost of one of them?
I have not gotten a cost yet. We had something from Billy, which was just like a 7 passenger, like regular, like Chrysler van.
Pacifica.
Okay, and I don't remember what he said. Do you remember what his price was? 40-some thousand, right? Yeah. And I would want to reach out to multiple places. I would want to see about some places for new, same thing, some places for new, some places for used, and see what we can get. But the used car market is crazy right now. I mean, the prices are out Gazoo.
What's it cost us for, like you said, a driver has to sit around and so forth? What's the
Yeah, I'd like
cost?
to know that.
20 some dollars an hour, 26
Yeah,
or
but what are we
27.
per
paying
event?
yearly
Sure.
for this?
So I took everything that I think is probably less than 10 kids. We're putting out about $7,000 a year. So in 5 years, if you can get a van somewhere around $30,000, you're paying for that van.
I mean, would you buy it outright or?
That's what we would be
No
looking to do.
interest?
Right. Yep.
Does that do anything with, I'm sorry, Mr. Weber, go ahead.
I just have a question. I know you said that the insurance covers drivers.
Yep.
Does it cover liability?
Yes, they're covered under everything that our regular
So if they have an
maintenance
accident-
guys are, that they're covered. Correct. It is our district insurance that would cover everything for that vehicle.
We've come a long way from when I used to drive Tech Wizards to the IU and my
Right.
convertible Mustang.
Exactly, exactly.
Is there any problem, I'm sorry, is there any problem with the contract with the bus company if we wouldn't do this?
They're separate.
Yep.
Who runs the checks on people, like for DUIs? and
We
everything?
would run them
Does
in-house.
that end
Yep.
up being a fee to us?
It would probably be a fee to us. Yep, that we would end up paying a fee to get that motor vehicle. And I didn't even ask that. I want to ask that, how much they
I think
pay
it's,
to
I
do
think it's
that.
only $5 or $10.
Yeah.
It's not,
Can't be that much.
It's 10
Yeah.
bucks, I think.
Yeah. So,
Any increase to insurance costs for doing that, for being able to insure the staff to drive, not only the staff, but then also the van itself?
no, I would
be
say
included in
the increased cost would be to insure the van, but I don't think there's any increased cost to insure staff because when we rent vans for like them to go out to states and stuff, they're covered under that. I just have to send them a copy of their insurance and we never get, I mean, a copy of their driver's license. We never are told, oh, you have this driver, so you have $40 more. You know, it's nothing like that. We just have to give them their insurance. Right.
I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm thinking now you put one in and now you have to have a policy on who gets it first. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but just, I'm thinking down the road then, how do you do that? Does it go to the,
Do you foresee that there are really conflicts of events? that
There's gotta be.
Would have to be crossed?
Does
over?
debate and like Scholastic go out the same time or ACE or any of that?
Without looking, I would say no.
Yeah.
Usually it's those kind of debate or events are, you know, like one day it's this group, next day it's this group.
Right,
They don't overlap, but I'm not gonna say that they never do,
Right.
right.
but
And I would
most
say-
times not.
And that's what I'm thinking because when I was going through the bills today, it was like, I had like 3 or 4 Scholastic scrimmages in one, and then the next month I had some for like debate. And then the
Not that
next
you
month
would have people who needed it, they couldn't use it,
Correct.
then they have to rent, now you're under
Right.
that cost of them.
Right.
Would we have the parents have to do something since it's a teacher, not a bus driver that's actually transporting the kids? I mean, is that an issue?
unfortunately, sometimes what's happening is exactly what Mr. Weber said, where he's taking kids, Tech Wizards, in his own vehicle, and
Yeah, we are not doing that.
we should not be doing that.
We're not doing that.
No, that ended
Is
a
that-
while ago.
Yeah, that liability is too high.
Yeah, but I just didn't know if it was different with a teacher driving a van versus a school.
Right,
think-
so
I
you have to
think-
give permission.
I
to
think
be
that
able
would
to
depend
go
on
or
what the
something.
actual event is, where we would need to get parent permission or not. Some of these probably clubs, I would say that we would probably would have to write a policy and say we're gonna get parent permission for that. Different than like a whole class field trip type of thing.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
The nice thing about all that though is that those things are scheduled well in advance.
Right.
That you can't put a calendar together.
So if an advisor did not want to drive, would the school district provide a driver then? How would that work?
I think that's something we would have to work through with the
Right.
policy and administrative regulations.
I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt to get a bid, it doesn't mean we have to take action on it.
Right.
Right.
Right, so I think if you put numbers together with what we spend, what it is, what the new cost is, what it does to our insurance, how much it is to get all the fees that go associated with
Right.
it, start to finish, and I think it doesn't hurt to get it.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's my opinion on it. We're not acting on it.
Yeah, put all the fees in it, you know, like you said, inspection, the whole bit, you know, everything that
Maintenance, all that.
it would have to include, gas, et cetera, and what are we looking at?
So we could almost follow the same process as the police car,
Right.
but then any additional.
And additional stuff.
I'll just add, in June of '22, we did approve the school vehicle driver's policy. We knew we didn't have that at the time, but we still went through with creating a policy. So we probably just have to tweak that, but there's one in existence through PSVA right now.
Thank you.
The nice thing too, though, is if you have if you have a sleepover, for example, you're not paying two
Right.
hotel bills, one for the driver and one for the advisor.
Which is
where you
why
have-
we
So
were-
you're saving half of that too. That has to all be considered in that.
Correct,
in
which
that
is
looking
why
at
we
that.
were renting the vans when we did for like track and stuff,
Right.
because we didn't want to pay a bus driver to sit out there, because the whole problem is they need to be there, well, especially track, because that's in Shippensburg. So there's
Mhm.
like no college, like the college is there, but all the rooms are like taken and they're like 20 miles away.
Mhm.
So it's like bus has got to be there the next day to get
And
those
they don't
kids
drive back
over
and
there
forth,
and
right.
back, so.
Yeah, those layover things that's where you're playing double
Right.
if you don't have your own.
No, I think it's a good idea, thanks for bringing that up. I was surprised when I saw that on the agenda, I'm like, we don't have any vans.
We may have them later.
Yeah, maybe later.
I don't have a problem with the concept of a van, but sometime I'd like to have some discussion on why we had 3 people go to track and had 4 coaches go with them. Okay, something doesn't add up in my mind. There are 3 athletes and 4 coaches. Go to Harrisburg for a weekend or Shippensburg for a weekend or
Right.
something. Mr. Geis isn't here, but maybe sometime we can get an explanation on that. That's,
I think part of that was they weren't just runners, they were, I
Correct.
think, a sprinter, a jumper, and I want to say a javelin thrower. So
Right.
each,
So the head coach
Yeah.
went, and then somebody who does the javelin, the
I
javelin
know, and
coach
we have
went.
a head cross-country coach, and we have 1 cross-country runner in high school too, and,
Right.
yeah. Okay, I'm just having a little concern with that, that's all, so.
Mhm.
I'll be quiet. No, I won't.
Does anybody else have anything?
Good discussions.
No? Then I'll say we're closed, and it goes over to Education Committee.
Bob's not here, Ron
And
is
Bob's
not
not here, Robin's not here, Chad's not here. Robin Disler.
Well, so then we'll start our education committee meeting, and I will turn it over to Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, sir. I have a PDF link there for your review. Briefly, during the first week of school, my faculty and I got together to come up with a new way of doing a transition from elementary school to middle school and having a better orientation than what we've done in the past. Typical orientations, we load 225 kids into the auditorium, yak at them for 2 hours about rules and regulations and try to do a tour and this and that. And we do other things, of course, with them to try to make them feel welcome. But we've always had this gut feeling that things could be better but just by thinking outside the box. So I was approached by some faculty members about doing something called middle school boot camp, in which we would address in 2 hours a day for the first week of school all the things that an orientation would cover and then some, but to the degree to which you actually get meaningful impact from it. So we ran this for 4 days. It was very successful, I feel. We got some good feedback from kids and faculty members to improve it next year. I did put a survey out to the faculty about what they thought. It was unanimous that they want to do it again. The first day was middle school basics, where we went over just kind of middle school 101, how to use your locker, how to navigate the building, how to work the cafeteria, things of that nature. The second day was I think we called it I've Got Your Back, where we went over student supports, how students can help their peers by making a SAP referral, what our positive behavior support looks like, how to handle conflicts effectively, safety and security in the building, what ALICE drills look like, what fire drills look like. Third day was called Making the Grade, and that's where we gave academic skills, some note-taking, some reading strategies, organizational strategies. And then on Thursday, we did Bulldogs Together, which was kind of our celebration day. That was our welcome back. We had a fun assembly. We did some bullying prevention as part of that assembly. There's the notice we put out to everybody. And then kind of the highlight of Thursday, we did an extracurricular activities fair where most of our extracurricular activities were represented by the advisors to kind of get some more kids interested in how they can get involved in middle school. That was some feedback we got last year from parents that they had no idea how much we offered here. So we're trying to do that. So I put that flyer together. Terry Honor from the Times News was there on Thursday. He did cover us, gave us a nice little write-up. I believe it was in Friday's paper,
Very nice.
of the Times News. And I got some pictures on there of different events. Our new SPO, Officer Probozniak, did a fantastic job talking about bullying and handling conflicts in a healthy way with kids. Mr. George, Charles George, did an amazing job talking about bullying in different ways, not just the rules, but what it actually does to the body and to the mind and to the brain. So he did that right on a middle school level that was easily understood by the kids, and that was a new approach for what we're doing there. So kudos to those members of our faculty and staff, and overall, the middle school faculty really hit a home run when it came to putting all this together. Their teamwork was exemplary.
Great idea. Good job. Great idea. Instead of just, like you said, sitting there and getting...
We covered everything, but we thought we can cover it.
Better.
We can do better.
I like the idea.
Looks good, good job.
Thank you.
Love the program. I would, with some of the extracurricular and some of those other items, to come back maybe in a month or 2 or 3 and just give us an update, and just curious kind of how it went. Did the kids take it on? Are we getting more involvement in after school activities? Are we seeing less bullying, more things into all of the things that you had talked about there? Just to see, I think it's a fantastic program. It was, Times News article was well done, and great way to start the school year, and I think it puts that face forward. So thanks for putting it together.
You're welcome. If you would like, I can share with Dr. Link and Dr. Stoker the results of the faculty survey. Maybe I don't know, for a board update or what have you, but I gave faculty to the end of this week to get that going. But that'll have some of that information in there on how many kids have signed up for extracurriculars versus where we've been, and just ideas for improvement things. So
Fantastic.
I can definitely forward that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Locker cleanliness is hopefully something that's there. I had a personal...
What do you mean? They're beautiful in middle school, No.
Thank God that's over.
We should buy stock in license.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Our next on the agenda is the biology pilot, Miller and Levine. I know, Mr. Pine, you're going to lead that discussion.
Sure, so I'll start, and I actually want to say first off, so excuse me, I had more aggressive dental work this afternoon than I thought I would, so the right side of my face is temporarily paralyzed. But I want to say first off, the middle school program was amazing. I was down there on Thursday. The only thing I will say is that your teachers, Mr. Hauser, did not believe your narrative of the history of the district and the area, so it was very, very well told, and I think they were just caught in disbelief about how fascinating the area is.
The Bulldogs together, we did an overview of kind of how we became the Bulldogs, because we have about 6 mascots prior to that. So we did a little history on how we were certain things, but we were Bulldogs in the end, and how in middle school sometimes you struggle to find yourself, but you will eventually do that. And hey, our district took a little while to find itself, and here we are. So. It was kind of a fun. We had a good time writing that part.
So the next thing that we have in here is, as promised from earlier in the summer, we are adopting a pilot right now. I'm not adopting a program, but adopting a pilot right now, moving throughout the course of this year. It's not a dramatic change. It's actually the same publishers and the same creators as our current biology program, but there was sort of a fortunate series of events that allowed us to get a free attempt at looking at this, as we are also this year going to be moving through our look at SEAL standards and updating our science curriculum in general. So I actually want to kick it back to Ms. Dunham and Dr. Bally. as they can talk about sort of how this ended up evolving throughout the end of the spring, and then now we are where we are in the fall.
Right next to you.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to pass around the biology textbook series that we are piloting, so you can take a look. Feel free to like come through it.
Do I have to read this before I pass it on?
There will be a quiz.
The whole thing, yeah. So I'm just here because I kind of like started this whole conversation. So last year, the biology teachers and I were all exploring different avenues for replacing what was known as USA Test Prep, which is now known as Progress Learning. So just a little background on that. Just like all of our students, they all need to prepare for the Keystone and that sort of thing. So we're looking for a replacement of that. So in looking for that, we actually found Miller and Levine, which is an updated curriculum that could also not only test prep, but also make the adaptations to the curriculum that are necessary for NGSS and phenomena-based learning, which is like where we're headed in science. So again, we were looking for a replacement for just a test prep tool, but we wound up finding so much more, and it's actually cost efficient. Right now it's costing absolutely nothing for the year, but if we decide to go forward next year, it will not cost anything more than the other programs. So this is actually a lot of bang for the buck.
Yeah, and I think the thing we loved about it was, you know, the professional development is not like a one-shot kind of thing, but it's more like a coaching model. So the reps will come in, they will answer teacher-specific questions, and it's really when we need it. So, you know, we could be a couple months in and say, listen, our teachers are struggling, we're struggling in this area, could you come and show us this? So it's that sustained professional development throughout the course of the year, which the teachers really liked. And we actually looked, right when I started, it was like one of those first days where we were looking at several things to pilot. And, you know, the teachers had already, several of the teachers had already got their hands pretty much into this program, and that we have their buy-in. And that is critical because, you know, it's not us saying, here's the standards aligned, wonderful phenomena-based program, but they saw it for themselves. So having kid buy-in, teacher buy-in, and free, we were like, yes. So, and of course with the sustained professional development. So, and in addition, it's online access. So everything is digital, but it's also print.
Yes.
So we've got, you know, and that is for kids who need, you know, have accommodations that need paper copies, things like that. So teachers have access to printed copies and digital, which is pretty cool.
So is there any cost to those folks coming in since we're not paying for the program?
Nope, it's all part of the pilot. All part of it.
So they want you to pay in the future, so
Yeah.
this is what they're
Yes.
doing?
Yes, however, and Mr. Pine can probably talk about this, you know, at some point, but like we had to like the future cost, we were like, this can't be right. Like this doesn't, you know, because when adopting any, yes, it's significantly lower. So, so everything was pointing us in this direction, and we really liked, you know, like Blasia said, we were really looking for the remediation, you know, the practice component, getting kids ready, more proficient, and we found all of this when looking for that. So we were pretty fortunate, I feel like.
And your buy-in from the staff, that's key.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we did a survey with them, and we want them to like the product. And again, we were looking all year long before Dr. Bali got here, looking for other things. And there really wasn't a replacement. I'm sure you remember Study Island from back in the day. So Edmentum had other avenues, but that was significantly more expensive. So, and it's not just about expense. It's also like, is it worthwhile? Is it actually going to prepare the students? You know.
And we asked them all those questions.
Yes.
Like we wanted data for them to come back and show us, like.
Do they have data that shows after this was used at
Like
a certain
implemented,
school? What
yeah.
was the
Yeah,
you know,
we can share all
outcome?
that with you for sure.
There's data collection built inside the curriculum, so when student takes assessments in there, it's like not just the benchmarking, but it's all standards aligned, so it's clear like what they've mastered and what they haven't. Now, I'm excited to see how this is all in theory. We haven't seen it yet, but you know we'll share that along our journey.
Yeah.
So this is starting for this
Yep.
school year,
Yep.
and that's what the teachers are Use it.
have in their hands right now.
Right
And
now.
that, a lot of the professional development at the beginning of the year, you know, was just our bio teachers attending this with the rep.
So for how they're gonna teach their classes, is that a lot of work for them to do now?
I mean, we have been transitioning as a district and as districts have been into more of the phenomenon, the inquiry-based model, the investigations, the problem-solving, so it's all of that, and this resource, that's the foundation of it. So it's just a means to where we had to go anyway, you know, as a science department. So does that,
Mr. Pine, do you want to talk a little bit
well?
about coaching as well?
Sure, yeah, so I just want to say a couple things, and I'm sorry the way I sound. But first of all, so the current, that text actually is the same publisher. So that transition is softened, whereas sometimes we get an entirely new program, and so we have to deal with the transition from the new program. But in addition, we actually do this year, I mentioned some board updates, I think, and I'd really like to get her in front of this committee, that Gabby Wilder at the high school, who's one of our biology teachers, we were able to make some room within our schedules based on our enrollment for this year in order to free her up to serve as an instructional coach to ease that transition for our teachers and ease the transition for all of us from the existing standards into the new STEEL standards. Because the biggest transition is actually going to occur not just in the textbook, but in the classroom, in the instruction. So when we're talking about phenomena-based instruction, we're talking about moving from just teaching kids how things like the weather cycle work to having them experiment and work through models to try and figure out how the weather cycle works. So we're not just creating kids who know science, but kids who can do science. So, I mean, that is really the transition we're working through. The fact that we're working through potentially a text series that is very compatible with what they already know, the way that it's organized in many ways, actually, it should, in terms of workload, ease that transition. And I do want to say that we are also looking at the high school, they're currently beginning the CBTs as a diagnostic tool from the state that will then allow us to do a little bit more to kind of compare and evaluate this text outside of the assessments within the text. Which that's what we're really always looking for. We're looking for those outside assessments like IXL, Study Island, et cetera. Is we're looking for something outside of the textbook companies, outside of their own creations, that we know has a valid connection to the state test, to these, you know, standardized tests. So we kind of have been able to connect all the dots, I think, here at this point, from what our initial search was about.
Did we any comments from the teachers or the input?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
I don't know if anybody said, I just didn't know if any from the union was, I didn't know if any teachers that visited.
And it's a very small population. It's the biology teachers. And you're talking about 4 teachers for this program. It's not like a big initiative, like, you know, like Canvas or something. Canvas, there'd be a lot of opinions, but biology, it's only 4 teachers as impacts right now. So, but they're all on board. They're a very supportive department. They really do work through with each other, and we've all been working with them to try to make this work. And
thanks for sharing that. I didn't know how many of them.
Oh, no, it's very valid.
And Gabby Wilder was one of the ones that had her hands really into this, so she's the perfect person to be able to go around and help, you know, these folks. So we're really excited about it.
I really love us looking for new options. My question that I would have is, change takes work, change is difficult, and change you have to feel a little bit of pain every once in a while. My concern is utilizing the same company and the same program. How much growth are we gonna see by doing that without changing? If that, am I asking that, does that make sense? Like, we're using the same program, which is great, because it makes the teachers comfortable, they're used to it, but we're also not seeing some of the growth numbers that we would like to see.
Right.
So we're kind of piloting something that we feel like we're gonna drive down the same path and still not see growth because we're not thinking grander than what we already have.
Miller in Levine, though, is the go-to in science.
It's a gold standard, yeah.
Yes, it's standard, and also I'd like to say it's revamped It's not the same. Miller and Levine, it's a big name that's been
Maybe
around
that's
for
what I
a
just
long
heard,
time.
that it's the same and.
Yeah. When we're saying
Might
it's
wait.
the same, it's really not. I mean, again, we're moving to NGSS, phenomena based, which is completely different way of teaching science. So while it's a familiar name, the whole approach is different. If that makes any sense. So the content should feel familiar. The way we're presenting the content is going to be different, and that's what this like new shift is kind of doing.
Yeah, that's what I guess that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yes.
Is there has to
It's
be.
how we teach, right? Yeah.
It's difficult. We're asking for you to move mountains. I get it, but we're at the point where we have to try to move mountains because we can't move pebbles anymore.
The I think change is going to come, right, in the way that we are teaching science. It's also going to come with curriculum changes. It's going to come with looking into data more. There's a lot of pieces that are going to be part of that change. So, it's not just this. In order to improve student outcomes, there's a lot of pieces that have to come together.
I'm willing to look at it. I promise.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
The same old doesn't
The same old doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
And those are great.
That's all I'm
Yeah.
asking. Is just to
No.
keep thinking outside the box. And if it's a different program and a different approach, great. Let's look at it.
And I'm hoping
How do we
that,
show it?
yes, all the things that we talked about. So the CDT, the same group that makes the Keystone, is making this benchmarking. We're using that. We're looking at that data. We're using, and I'd love to say that all the teachers are using the exact same resource and are following the same pacing. I can't say that. They will now. You know what I mean? So, so the consistency, the data piece, the core, curriculum plus the remediation piece, like you're right. We're asking a lot of them.
We are.
But we've got, a resource by which we can put all the pieces together, and then with Gabby and
Yeah, and I think changing in biology, how then are we changing? How are we taking those 4 teachers who are learning a new way that we're saying is the best way to go teach? How are we doing that district-wide?
Yeah.
To say, we're going to take this same concept now and teach it here and teach it here and teach it here, because it's a progression from K through 12. If we're just doing pockets of teaching of it, it's not helping anybody. You got to have the continuation of it.
I'm glad you
So
said
that's
that
part
because I was thinking, I love what Scott said about how, they're not just learning it, they're doing it. Years ago, we for the elementary, we had a program called Sciences Elementary. I don't know if you remember that, right? It was hands-on, it came with a kit with supplies, and the kids also journaled. So it combined the literacy, combined the hands-on, and at some point that kind of went away. And I hope we can get back to that with the elementary too.
So I'm sorry. So that's part of what Gabby is going to do. She's not just going to be working with the biology teachers at the high school. She is going to be working across the district. So do you want to talk more about what that looks
I'm
like?
talking way more than I should. But so to answer your question, Gabby Wilder, who I mentioned earlier, that is why we did what we did. We saw an opportunity now to leverage a staff member to facilitate this change across the district. And much of the work she's going to be doing, particularly in the first half of this year, is with the elementary programs in order to make this change so that way they have more experiences like that. And I'll tell you when it changed with the increased emphasis on standardized testing. And now I'm going to go on my little rant where the anarchists who got on this standards board that created the NGSS standards and the SEAL standards in the states were setting us up for a real battle between the types of science learning that lead to scientists and the types of science learning that lead to kids being able to regurgitate the water cycle on a test all the time, right? And being able to fit those things in. So there's been a narrowing of content in the standards in order to try to accommodate more of these experiential science opportunities for kids. So there's going to be a strange period here over the next couple of years as we're navigating that transition from what ended up becoming a science curriculum that was very much directed by, I could say this, Slatington Elementary, the PSSA coach books literally told us everything we needed to know in order to have students perform well in those PSSA tests, which is why the science scores in 4th grade have historically been very, very good. But at the same time, it's been at the expense of more experiences like that. So it is going to be a navigating of making sure that science knowledge is there, but then making sure that we're also building up those skills that can only come from experience. So that's why, Gabby Wilder in that position, working with teachers and administrators across the district, we're really trying to make sure that we get back to a place where we are doing more of that, and making sure that as we transition into those standards with slightly less content, we're able to fit more of those experiences in, which is going to be very difficult to test. And I think at even our joint council meetings, they've been suggesting that the biology test might be more difficult because they may not be looking to change that, but they are probably looking to change the way that we administer the PSAs at the prior grades in order to accommodate some of that standard shift. So I can actually feel some of my face feeling coming back. So I hope, so we really are looking K through 12 at this. This was just an opportunity that came up unexpectedly, which is why this didn't come to you earlier in June, and we didn't talk about this before we had these conversations over the summer. And we're actually even backtracking. We're going to be talking about it at Curriculum Council, which usually we do Curriculum Council, then Education Committee, to make sure it goes through all of this process beforehand, just because it was kind of an opportunity that popped up to pilot this year. The teachers were excited about it. It answered part of our assessment question, and then with the CDTs, we were able to fill in the rest of those blanks. So we do think that we've enriched the continuum, at least for that. I think that we are looking at that at other stages as well. Right now, Slatington's looking at delivering the CDTs as well. So we are looking at assessment options all the way throughout that will allow us to continually evaluate curriculum in a way that we have been able to for math and ELA to some extent, right? But that we've just struggled to a little bit more with science up until now. So.
And I'll just add, we are ahead of the curve. This doesn't have to happen this year. So we are making the transition ahead of time so that we are in a good place when the transition is actually mandated. So CDTs are going to have some early release items for what the new tests are going to look like at the state level. So we're going to see things ahead of schedule. So hopefully that's a good thing for us then when we jump into what's mandated.
Yeah, this is the first of many conversations we'll be having about science in the district over the course of next year.
I'm thrilled to see, like, a month from now, what you can say about it. You know, this was a success, or we found out that we thought it was going to be this and it wasn't, or, you know, if you could share.
And we'll be honest. Listen, if it's not working, we're not going to, that's the whole idea of the pilot, is to try it out and test it. So we're really in this evaluation stage. And Gabby and myself will be there to support teachers to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible. So
And
we will definitely update you.
And if the kids actually, learned something.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
That's really cool.
I can leave these.
I glanced at it and it was really good.
Thank you.
I think you should look it up.
All right, the next item we have on is high school transcripts. There have been some updates in the high school transcripts. Tell me what you want me to click on.
Well, you're right. Maybe one of the examples, maybe the 12th grade, just so they can see. So, I was not here for long for the old transcript, but here we go, the new transcript, high school transcript. So the goal was to create a formal transcript rather than a transcript kind of resume that students are required to receive. So just some highlights of the new transcript, and there's an example there that Dr. Stoker has put up there. So little, kind of like cosmetic changes. We added the logo, changed wording from official transcript to student transcript, since there are times that we hand a student their transcript that makes it unofficial. We added students' addresses, which are helpful for colleges. We made a new transcript, number 1 page, added current year's courses, so college has a view of what the student is currently taking and what they have taken in past years. We added an unweighted GPA. We added Act 55 industry credentials, added credits attempted to each grade level. We moved for activities and clubs, as that is the student's responsibility to self-report those. And overall, you can see, I wish I would have thought to put like an old one next to a new one, but overall, a much more professional document.
I think these are the old ones. This is a 9th grade one, the 12th grade one.
Okay. Oh, we do have those. Okay.
Yep. All 3 of them are linked in there, so you can see
great.
old
Thank
versus
you.
new.
Old versus new.
Is the change to remove the activities from transcripts, is that like a universal thing that's happening, or is that something, at Northern Lehigh that we're choosing to not put on there?
You know, I have not seen them like in the, well, Allentown was a long time ago, but we didn't have those in Northampton, but I can only speak to the ones I know. We did not have activities listed on there, so I don't know if that is if that's a trend in
Some schools
you know,
do, some schools
transcripts.
don't. It really depends on the district. You know, just like some schools have valedictorians, salutatorians, and
Yeah.
some don't.
Yes.
It's all on the application when students apply to colleges or whatever they're looking to do, so it's a duplication. But again, a lot of them are self-reported anyway. So it's, you know, they don't necessarily verify them and put them on a transcript, so I think I feel more comfortable as the high school, not necessarily putting them on there, but having students report them. Because I feel like when it's on the transcript, we're verifying that it's, you know, something that the student's participating in.
Yeah, and if they went
See
out
it
for
both
it.
ways.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm going, well, you know, by putting it on the transcript, that means that we as a district are saying they've
Yeah.
participated in that activity. Not just self-reporting, I can say that I'm on the chess club and never played
I can do some
chess before,
homework on that for
but-
sure. Yeah.
you know, Princeton University is not gonna know if I played chess or not. Not that that matters, but I'm just asking on an activity level, as activities are now really a big part of college applications.
Yes.
And just not having it on there now after having it on there, I just question why we would have taken it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, that's I mean, I can definitely do some homework. I know in the applications themselves, they go quite into detail about all of those activities, but at quick glance, I see what you're saying for sure. I don't know what the rationale was for that. I mean, as I said, I don't know. I know Northampton doesn't have them on their official transcripts, but I don't know what the discussion was for that. Did you hear anything like that?
No, just that it was a self-reported,
Yeah, that they go into, you know, quite detail in the application itself, so,
No, I like it.
yeah.
I like it. I think it's simple, it's easy to read.
Yeah.
It's what the colleges look for.
Yeah.
Easy to read, like.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions or topics for the education committee? If not, we want to close it?
Yeah, we'll close it for now.
For policy.
We'll go ahead and open policy, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Stoker for some updates.
Thank you, Mrs. Husak. So we have 3 policies on the agenda for this evening. The first one is policy 006. It's in regard to meetings of the school board. Most of the changes are on page 6. And they fall mainly into what you see as number 3. So in that area, in the voting section, language was removed from the actions that require affirmative vote of 2/3 of those voting in the presence of a quorum. Those 2 were actually moved to the actions requiring the affirmative votes of 2/3 of the full membership of the board. So that change was made once those 2 items came out and were moved to a different category. Then that entire category was no longer needed. So that's why all of that is stricken from that area. In addition, there were a few other items that were added, including 2/3 of the full members for adding or increasing appropriations to meet an emergency or catastrophe. Anything that you see also that has an asterisk is something that has to be reported in the minutes with a vote. And then just some language was just moved around here. So in E, you'll see borrowing money upon an obligation or in anticipation of current revenue. You'll see adopting or changing textbooks without the recommendation of the superintendent. In C, it was assistant instead of assistant superintendent, so that was changed. Approving or denying a charter school application, approving or denying multiple charter school organization applications, establishing joint schools or departments. So those are ones that are in the law that we have to have in there as part of this. P, again, just some rewording, authorizing the transfer of any unencumbered balance or portion thereof from one appropriation to another, or from one spending agency to another during the last 9 months of the fiscal year. And then what you see as S was just moved up so that all of the charter school information was in the same location. So those are the main changes to this policy, and those are all governed by rules and law. So they were just PSBA's recommendations of where to put that information based upon those changes. This policy is recommended to show that we have compliance with the Sunshine Act. Does anybody have questions on that? Do we have the approval of the board members present to move that for first reading to next Monday night?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, the next policy is policy 216.1, supplemental discipline records. So policy 216.1, PSBA recommended actually taking their policy and using their newer version and just kind of eliminating our old one. So that's why you'll see most of this policy is completely red, because it was easier to start with the current or new policy that they're recommending. We originally adopted it in 1999 and we last revised it in 2008, which is some time ago, so much has changed. This policy is mainly being changed because of changes to the school code with release of information to schools. In the past, sometimes we would get information from juvenile probation with regard to students, sometimes we wouldn't. It really depended who our liaisons were that we were working with. So this was to regulate that. So the juvenile probation office is now required to provide notice to the building principal or designee upon finding a juvenile who is enrolled in our school entity to be delinquent. So now we have to get notice from juvenile probation. So it's really just to make that more consistent. So you'll see some of the language and authority I was able to just update to match what the new rules, new language looks like. Everything else is pretty much stricken out and just the new paragraphs have been put in there. Again, you can read through, I'm not going to read every line of the policy, but it's really just to make sure that there's communication between juvenile probation and the school districts so that we understand that a student has been adjudicated delinquent. Okay. This policy is recommended for legal liability purposes. Any questions on the policy? Do we have the ability or the from the board members present to move this to Monday night for a reading, for first reading?
Good to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last one is policy 251, students experiencing homelessness, foster care, and other educational instability. So policy 251, if you recall, we had several policies that were updated. The last time this was actually board approved was just in April of 2023, and we did a whole bunch of policies for the new qualifier of educational instability. In revising this policy, the very, very end of this policy was something that our district did not feel comfortable with. Our special education department and other special education departments across districts did not feel comfortable that it met what was actually happening in districts. So when we passed this, we revised it to match what was happening in our district, which was within the law. There was so much pushback from districts that PSBA actually went and revised their policy to still be within the law, but to match what districts are saying is happening in their district. So We originally made some of our own edits, which you'll see is in that last paragraph in red that's stricken out. And now we have adopted PSBA's policy because we feel now that it fits with what we're doing, and also just to keep language consistent with what they're recommending. Previously, we just didn't feel with what they were recommending was what we were doing, and other law firms, had some pushback there as well. Okay, so you can just see the changes in green where we added some things in there, and then their recommendation is to completely remove that last paragraph. Does anybody have questions on that?
Just when you're updating, these are going through our lawyers and PSBA, everything is
So they don't.
copacetic, or?
Yep, so they don't go through our attorneys. PSBA puts out language, we adopt that language and push that through. If we add anything else to it as a district, so if we kind of tweak the language a little bit, then it runs back through PSBA, and they look at it again before they publish it for us.
Okay.
So they are looking at it multiple times. I don't know, Shelley, do you want to address what actually happened with your
Actually,
consortium?
the last paragraph there that they had previously there, okay, we changed, because it's really an IEP team decision. Their line that says, that the student can stay just because they want to stay, instead of it being a team decision. Such students may participate in the graduation ceremony with the current, there was another part that says, may elect. So the student may elect to stay. That's not altogether true. There's different pathways to graduation. That's an IEP team decision as to which pathway they take. It's not a student's decision to stay, even if they've graduated with standards-based goals, and have qualified like a regular ed student has, okay? It's not their choice just to stay because they want to. So we changed that, secondly, and then eventually PSBA kind of looked at it and said, oh, everyone else is disagreeing, kind of that it's an IEP team decision, and then now they have stricken the whole paragraph, is what happened.
Okay,
And
thank
that
you for
mainly came from
clarification.
like consortium attorneys, school district attorneys that looked at that and were like, no, we would like that language to look a little bit different. And so PSBA now has followed suit with that. To answer your question about, there being discord between attorneys and PSBA, it rarely happens. It happens, but very rarely. This is just one of those instances.
Thank you for reviewing the process, appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, any questions on the policy? All right, do we have people here, school board members, are we able to move this for a first reading for Monday night board?
We're good to move forward. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sounds reasonable.
All right, and again, that is a mandated policy, we have to have that policy. All right, anything else for policy committee this evening?
I'll go ahead and close the meeting.
All right.
First one?
All right, I guess I'll be opening community relations and sending it over to Dr. Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. The first item on the agenda tonight is the digital marquee update. We are currently progressing through permitting in the manufacturing process of the marquee, and Mr. Durr has been in communication to complete the Uniform Construction Code application with the permit. It should be kind of a non-issue because we're replacing a current sign, even though it's digital, it's going into the same base, the same framework. Mr. Durr and our school district electrician, Mr. Mann, are also working with PPL to make sure that the electrical service that goes directly to the current marquee is enough to support the new sign that we're putting in. We're still looking at like a 6 to 8 week installation. And we are developing a process for posting requests to be submitted to a single point of contact for review and approval. And then only a handful of specific employees will have access to actually post the content remotely. We don't want to just open that up. So everybody, all administrators have access to it. We will not be allowing outside entities to post content on there. It will only be school district sponsored clubs, teams, the buildings themselves. We believe that we're very generous with allowing outside entities to submit flyers for us to send out through our community outreach system. So we are not going to open up the billboard for the Boy Scouts or Northern Lehigh Recreation or those type of organizations, even though they're local, they're not actually operated by the school district. Any questions on the digital marquee update?
So the specific employees, excuse me, that's going to be the administrative team is going to.
It's going to be part of the administrative team right now. It's most likely that Mrs. Nemi, my administrative assistant, will be the single point of contact. The request will go to her. We will then review them, most likely at a cabinet meeting. And then to post, right now, we're looking at Mrs. Nemi to be able to post, right, actually put the content up, myself, Dr. Stoker, and probably Chief Jones, in case there's any sort of emergency situations where he wants to get quick directions out to people as they arrive to campus.
Who does it now? I just hate to see it come to your level to do it
So
if it's.
we're kind of shifting it in that the marquee that's there now, right, the kind of manual, kind of analog marquee is for the middle school. However, with the investment that we're putting into this process, we wanted to make it accessible for district-wide updates, which is why we're looking to kind of bring it up here to this level. It's unlikely that I'm going to be actually the one keying it in.
Yeah.
However, if I need to, I need to,
Your secretary will do that.
like some sort of, well, even if I have to do it at, 3 o'clock in the morning to respond to something to give out direction that, hey, no school today, whatever the reason may be, I need to be able to go do it. I'm not going to call Mrs. Nemi at 3 o'clock in the morning. Or, hey, we have to do an emergency closure today due to, there's a water main break.
There you go.
Something like that.
Right.
If I'm the one that's making the decision, much like the COS
Except for
software, I want to do it like right then.
Sure.
Except for emergencies, though, you will have a way to make sure that we have 2 people trying to put something on today. 2 different people putting something on today, for example.
Like conflict.
Yeah, well,
Like,
we're going to
you're
have
gonna
more,
work that
all
all out.
requests are going to be reviewed.
I mean, that's all
Yeah,
internal
it's
anyway.
probably going to be more than a 24-hour turnaround time for like, hey, the theater department is doing a fundraiser.
Mhm.
Well, okay, we'll get back to you on that. It's not going to be very long because we have cabinet twice a week, so we can get back to them fairly quickly.
That's all eternal.
But we wanted kind of like, here's the standard type of request, we're doing the mum sale, type of thing, versus, hey, the rendezvous site for parent pickup because of an event that happened at Peters Elementary School is going to be here, or vice versa, something like that. Those will be as quickly to real time as possible.
I just had a quick question, maybe, Mr. Hill, maybe you can answer this. The quality of the image, is it an LED display, is it because I noticed like the Boyer sign is very clear,
Yeah.
but the Diamond sign is a little pixelated.
So we're getting the 10 millimeter,
Okay.
which I think the Diamond Fire Company had the like 14.
Okay.
That's like 8, 10, or 12. I forget what they are. I have the specs back there.
I mean, I'm old and partially blind.
So
but-
ours should be much more like Boyers, or if you've driven by Northwestern Lehigh High School, I think it's even one tier up from there.
Okay.
But I've noticed that as well, and I actually had a lot of conversations with the rep from Bardish Signs about that, and part of it is what level millimeter kind of. It's actually several fields, right? And each field has 1,000 pixels or whatever it is. He said the bigger indicator as to whether the image is going to be kind of blurry or not is the quality of the picture that you're loading into it. So if somebody's just snapping a picture off of, most cell phones nowadays they're high end, but if it's like an older one like that, it's not going to come up clear on that type of technology. So we have to be very careful with which kind of actual pictures we upload to it.
Gotcha.
They also have a bank of pictures, which is just like thousands of already kind of free access type pictures that you would see maybe in like PowerPoint and that type of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, we had a lot of conversations with that. The number of pixels also has to do with how close you are to the actual sign as to whether it blurs or not. So we kind of looked at, it's very unlikely somebody's going to be up close to that sign. They're going to be looking at it as they're driving down Center Street or pulling into the parking lot, which at closest is probably 20 yards, maybe 15 yards to the driveway. So it's not like they're going to be right on top of it. We learned an awful lot about digital marquees over the last half year. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but it was just, it wasn't a shot at anyone, it was just a curiosity.
Yeah, and actually Bardish did all three of those entities, their signs. So they were also very familiar with that equipment. Okay, website translation services. So I may need to lean on Mr. Hill for this a little bit as well. But as you recall, we have recently switched to a new, not switched to, but our Blackboard website is now owned by Final Site. Google's kind of free translating services on websites is sunsetting. It's not going to be available anymore. That's currently what's built into our program. So we have to offer these kind of translating services, especially as we see the number of languages that our families speak here in Northern Lehigh. I did have the list for my opening remarks. I think we're up to about 8 or 9 different languages being spoken by our students and their families. And some of their parents and guardians only speak that language and only read that language. So there is an add-on to that Final Site is offering, which basically does what Google was doing for us for free. And that is at a price of $1,000 annually. And administration is recommending and requesting that annual fee actually come out of the school board budget, because it's going to be communications on behalf of the district out to everyone. It may be building specific at times, but a lot of what's on that website is kind of like district wide. I do not want to go back and kind of to each of the building budgets and say, okay, you each need to give me X number of dollars. The school board within their line items does have like publications and things like that. This would fit into what you have built into your budget, and you would still have a little bit left in case you want to do anything else throughout the year. So I am recommending and requesting.
This is the last time.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to request every year that's kind of where that expense rests moving forward.
Can I just add that we talked last time that we would look into Title III monies and with the possibility of paying out of that. I reached out to the Pennsylvania Department of Education Federal Programs, the person that's in charge of ESL, and they said that if it's important enough to put on the website, it needs to be it should be translated for all families so that it's readable for all families, and that it's not. If it's a translation service that's happening for all, then it's not something we can pay for out of that. We can't use that. It's supposed to be supplemental, not something that we're using for that purpose. So we were denied using our Title III funds for that.
So annually, you just put it into the administrative, or to the school board budget?
Yeah, we're not asking to increase that budget, by the way. We're pretty confident that we can fit it within that budget.
We run short, we'll take it out of superintendent's budget.
Sure.
No big deal.
There you go.
We'll get a loan.
Yeah.
How much do you spend anyway?
Oh, gosh.
I'm fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So does that, Mr. Hill, give you enough kind of direction to work with Final Site? Okay, thank you. Okay, up next, I'm not going to read through all of these, but I asked our building leadership and Mr. Geist to kind of send me the fall upcoming dates for different kind of community events. I wanted to kind of get it out in front of everyone, everything from parent nights to award nights to coffee and conversations to some athletic, kind of traditionally athletic type events coming up. not only to share at this committee, but so it also gets into the minutes going out to the community.
Will it be on the website too?
Well, what happens is these events, bless you.
Put on the calendar?
There's not a list on the website.
No, on the calendar itself.
Most of them are on the building level calendars. And we'll send out building level communications, whether it's newsletters or actual like community outreach notifications, potentially on a billboard when it's up as we move deeper into the fall and into the spring. Those type of communication avenues. We do have a guest this evening that would like to comment on upcoming events, being Mrs. Williams.
Under the athletics, I'm not too sure who schedules the awards night for sports, but lately, with my daughter being in like fall, winter, spring, they're scheduling, you can see on November 6th, but it's the same night as the committee meetings. So whoever like schedules those, could they maybe possibly move it, the awards night, to another night?
I can absolutely.
It's kind of a conflict, like, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure there's some of the board members now might have students in high school that you're gonna wanna go to their awards night, but now can't come to the committee night because they're gonna be at their child's awards night. So I don't know who schedules that.
So those are scheduled by the athletic department.
Okay, so if you could move it to another night, not a school board meeting.
I can take the request.
Yeah.
I don't know all the other logistics that go into it, but I can absolutely take the request to reconsider.
Because I know, I looked at my calendar, the spring was at the end of the month on a Monday, that wasn't a problem. But last year, I do know fall and the winter, they both were scheduled for the committee meeting nights. So that, you know, just in case anybody wants to come to the meeting. Yeah. I agree. I'm right there with you. So.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Son plays and your daughter plays field hockey, we'll be at the awards night, not here.
So I can send that request into him and just kind of get feedback on what are the other factors that go into the scheduling.
Okay, no problem.
Sure.
If not.
Dr.
Just a
Lind,
suggestion.
if I may as well, I have a typo in mine. It should read Tuesday, September 12th for Coffee and Convo.
Oh.
Not the 6th. I looked at the wrong Tuesday. My apologies.
Boom, fixed.
Is this something you can continue to add, you know, as we go through the school?
Yeah, we can do that going into, like as we go more into like the winter.
Yeah,
And then again
because I
in
think it's
spring,
helpful for
late
people to be able
spring.
to look at it and know and plan and things like that.
Sure.
Actually, I like it, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Kind of almost like seasonal.
Yeah, it's like looking at the school calendar, knowing when you
Just
have.
rolling calendar.
Yeah.
What day did you just change your conversation and convos to?
The 12th. It should be Tuesday.
The 12th.
Mm-hmm. the very first
12th at 6:30.
I thought that's what you said, and then I'm like, wait, I have this. Then I saw it up there and it said the 6th, and I'm like, maybe I just heard it wrong.
The 6th is not a Tuesday, and I just.
So Tuesday the 12th.
I claim brain cramp.
Is that accurate now, Mr. Hauser?
That looks like the old.
I think, hold on, I know what's going on. You're projecting a different agenda.
This is the one she sent out.
Yeah, it's the one she sent out on our, yeah.
because
That's what I'm losing my.
I'm like, I'm looking at it right here.
And I'm like, oh, well, maybe mine's right.
Yeah, I know.
That's my fault, my screen is not being projected.
Now it's really officially changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker. Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Are there any other kind of questions or feedback for the Community Relations Committee?
No.
I mean, I just second what Natalie said. I mean, as we go along, if we can take this list and just modify it as we go. I mean, as the events happen, knock them off, and new ones get added on.
Yeah, I think
that's good.
I like that idea.
Do you often have a heads up on when prom is and stuff, or is that something that's decided like kind of closer to?
I think we know pretty well in advance, and honestly, I don't really get in the weeds with that, so I'm going to look to Mr. Stroll and Dr. Bali for kind of scheduling of the prom and the class advisors, and I suspect we already have a venue booked. Oh wait, we have our. Yeah, we literally have the class advisor here. Ms. Dunham, can you give a little insight onto that potential date?
Let me just get the date. Okay, we have a venue, we have a date. I just have my computer died. Of course, give me 1 second.
Sure. So yes. Are there any other questions? I'm just going to stall a little bit. Well, good. I'm looking forward to actually, despite what you may seeing in the news recently, I feel like we're going to be able to offer all of these events this year. Even if COVID cases were to rise, I feel confident that we're going to be able to. All indicators now are that we're going to be able to offer these type of events, throughout the year this year.
I have the date.
Yes.
All right, so it's Saturday, April 27th at Twin Lakes, the club at Twin Lakes. Very nice location, deposits made. Unknown caller.
Thank you.
That venue has gone through some significant upgrades.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we do one additional addition? As our student representatives come in,
Yep.
they say some really fun things that are going on at the high school. Could they add some of those to this as well, of blood drives and things like that they're working on that potentially could pertain to some of us that we might
Yes.
attend?
So how I tried to kind of put a framework around this one was like events that are open to the community. So like
Okay.
a blood drive would be,
Right.
but if it's like, a field day or a pep rally, those aren't open to the community. So
Understood.
Yeah.
But no, I like the thought, even if we can get community members to our blood drives or a food bank donation because it's at a football game or something to that effect, that helps drive additional community support. When's the next career fair?
April 19th.
April 19th,
Yeah.
so I know that's not on here yet.
You were quizzing, right?
I was just making sure you had your calendar in your head.
Mr. Stroll, will the jet be landing at the middle school?
I'm gonna call it Gravedigger.
Only if the permits are due.
Mr. Stroll, I'd like to talk to you.
Maybe we can test it out in Stroll's office.
Any other thing for the good this evening for community relations? Okay, Mr. Chrisman, you want to close the meeting?
I guess we'll close it out and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
We're done.